Good evening and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting, Monday, 23rd of May 2022. 1. Meeting opening. 1.1. Attendance. Mr Keasley, are there any apologies?
There are no apologies other than Councillor Formosa, who is on leave of absence.
Thank you, Mr Keasley. 1.2. Acknowledgement of traditional owners of the land. Council acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of this land, the Bunurong people, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, while also recognising their deep and continuing connection to climate, culture and country. We also pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their elders and acknowledge their journey. Item 1.3. Offering of prayer, reflection or affirmation. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the prayer, reflection or affirmation this evening will be offered by Ms Ros Blades AM from the Jewish community, a member of the Greater Danding Interfaith Network. Deputy Mayor Foster will read the prayer this evening.
We pray for our nation's history and acknowledge the Indigenous sacrifice of the past and the pains and terror of our history, and trust in our relationships of the future we will learn to honour, nurture and sustain each other. Almighty God, who favours humanity with knowledge and teaches mortals understanding, we beseech you to favour us, and especially the councillors of the City of Greater Dandenong, with the knowledge, the understanding and the insight that comes from you, so that their deliberations may truly be for the well-being of all its citizens. Blessed are you, Almighty God, gracious giver of wisdom and knowledge. Shalom.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Foster. Item 1.4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting of Council held on the 9th of May 2022. Moved by Councillor Milkovic, seconded by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, the item is carried. Item 1.5, disclosures of interest. Mr Keasley.
Thank you, Mayor. We have no disclosures of interest tonight.
Thank you, Mr Keasley. 2. Officers' reports, Part 1. 2.1, documents for sealing. 2.1.1, documents for sealing. Moved by Councillor Trong, second by Councillor Tan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, the item is carried. 2.2, documents for tabling. 2.2.1, petitions and joint letters. Moved by Deputy Mayor Foster, second by Councillor Tan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. 2.3, statutory planning applications. 2.3.1, planning decisions issued by the Planning Minister's Delegate, April 2022. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. 2.3.2, planning delegated decisions issued April 2022. Moved by Councillor Long, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 3, question time public. Mr Keasley.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 questions tonight. The first one is from Valerie Raperti of Dandenong North. She indicates that she does not wish to verbally present, so I'll read it out. What is happening with council advocacy on behalf of residents with the lack of a genuine consultation on the sites 11 to 15 of the Revitalising Central Dandenong project, and what is the status of the project? Mr Bosman, thank you.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you. And in answer to Valerie Raperti, Council has written to Development Victoria seeking their support to revisit the community engagement and consultation process and arrange a community information session that addresses the questions canvassed and outlines the next steps in the process, which will lead to the commencement of Stage 1 works. Officers sought an update on this request last week, and we're still awaiting a reply from Development Victoria. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mayor. The second question is from Susan Smith from Dandenong, and she also wishes for myself to read the question. What is the status of the Dandenong Community Hub project, and when is the next round of consultation on the design? Ms Budin, please.
Ms Budin.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Council has requested additional concept plans for the Dandenong Community Hub be developed featuring alternative layouts to the concept plan released for public comment in 2021. This work includes a detailed cost analysis of all the alternative layouts in order to gain an understanding of the expected cost of all options being considered. The time frame for delivery of this work has been adjusted accordingly. Future rounds of consultation on design will be advertised via Council's website and distributed to all stakeholders involved in previous consultation rounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Budin. Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mayor. The third question is from Mr Dom Bakari of Keysborough. He starts, good evening. How can our council assist bringing all of the different community groups together to work on a plan to engage as many people possible to make our community a better place to live in? We need one community. Some of us are happy to work with council on this matter. We don't need lip service, we need action. Currently, we see no engagement, just examples of, look at the lack of community members at the previous VicPol meeting we had. 15 people attended, but thank you to those councillors who did attend. Ms Sprague, please.
Ms Sprague.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. In 2021, Council undertook probably its most extensive community engagement exercise ever for the development of the Greater Dandenong Community Vision and Council Plan. Over 1,000 ideas were received from the community across a broad range of consultation activities, followed by the formation of our first ever People's Panel to undertake a deliberative engagement process. This saw 31 people who were statistically representative of our community meet over 3.5 days to discuss the future of our city and the aspirations of its people. Further information on that process is available on Council's website. Council also has various groups and committees who meet regularly to work on their respective plans. This includes the Community Safety Committee, Sustainability Advisory Committee, Disability Advisory Committee and Positive Ageing Committee, among others. Each is made up of interested community members working for the benefit of the Greater Dandenong community, and expressions of interest to join these groups are advertised as needed. Further to this, we currently have the Community Engagement Planning Framework open for consultation. We would love to get feedback on this important document, so I encourage everyone to take a look online or contact us for a hard copy. This is essentially our blueprint for consultation, so now is the perfect time to provide input to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Sprague. Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mayor. The final question tonight comes from Emad Farag, who is in the audience tonight, with regards to a property in Thomas Street, Dandenong. Do you wish to ask this yourself, or are you happy for me to read it out? Okay, thank you. The question is, how to report a building that hasn't got an occupancy after 5 years of occupation, although all the documents have been lodged to the council in 2017 and have been inspected also by council. Mr Bosman, thank you.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you to yourself and to Mr Farag. Mr Farag, I think you're referring to the building at 229 Thomas Street. And if you're asking how to report a building that doesn't have one, we have a process. Just simply let the council officers know and we will inspect the building. If you're referring to the building at 229 Thomas Street, per the address above here, that matter is currently before the courts, and I'll make no comment in respect of that due to the fact that it is currently before the courts. But I think you would probably be aware of much of the detail around that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Mr Kearsley. Thank you, Mr Kearsley. No, sorry, at the moment we're in the council meeting, but you're happy to stay after the meeting and have a chat. Item 4, Officers' Reports, Part 2, 4.1, Other, 4.1.1, Reappoint of Chief Executive Officer.
I move.
Moved by Councillor Long, second by Deputy Mayor Foster. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition?
I indicate opposition.
Opposition, Councillor Dark. Councillors will go straight to a vote. All in favour of this motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Trung, Councillor O'Reilly, Deputy Mayor Foster, Councillor Long, Councillor Metti, Councillor Lim, Councillor Tan. All against, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Milkovic and Councillor Dark. The motion is carried 7-3. Move on to the next item, councillors. 4.1.2, report on matters discussed at councillor briefing sessions and pre-councillor meetings on the 11th and 26th of April and the 2nd of May 2022. Moved by Councillor Long.
Second.
Second by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. 4.1.3, proposal to lease council's leisure services premises to South East Leisure Proprietary Limited. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any questions? Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, my question is to the relevant officer with regards to the proposal to lease the leisure services to South East Leisure. For as far as I'm aware, certainly I haven't come across. I just asked Councillor Milkovic and Councillor Tan as well, and they haven't received it. Do we have a copy of South East Leisure's proposed budget of their impending financial operations? Sorry.
Ms Roberts? Or is it Ms...
I don't have a copy to hand at the moment, but we'll take the question on notice and provide a copy of some sort of documentation. I'm not sure what exists at the moment, but we'll provide it at a later date.
Thank you, Ms Roberts. Any further questions? Is there... Councillor Dark?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'm sorry to take this on notice. I'm just trying to seek some understanding. Given that we're signing over our leisure centres and some of them produce, there's profit and losses in both of them, I think it would be probably prudent to ensure that we do have the exact proposed budget of South East Leisure before issuing a lease to South East Leisure for our facilities. So if possible, could we defer this item to the next council meeting, if possible?
Ms Roberts?
Through you, Mr Mayor. This report is just to advertise the lease at the moment. It's not to actually endorse the lease. So I would ask that council actually commences this statutory process and it will come back to council for endorsement at the second meeting in June. So if you're happy to do that, that would be great.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ms Roberts. Is there any further questions? Councillor Dark?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Ms Roberts for the clarification. If it's just the advertising, I'll support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Councillor Garrard?
Yeah, I would just encourage the community to, have a good read of this document and to comment.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. 4.1.4, list of registered correspondence to Mayor and Councillors. Moved by Councillor Trung, second by Councillor Tan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 5, notice of motion. There are none. Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members and councillor questions. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I have just two questions this evening. My first question is from a resident of my ward, Mr Kao, to do with the Alan Corrigan Reserve, and I've previously raised it with the relevant directors. There's been a significant amount of people turning up to play, I believe it's netball or volleyball, on the middle of the reserve, and there's a bigger and bigger crowd that keeps accumulating over time. A lot of residents nearby are raising concerns that it's becoming quite loud. The damage is being done, a lot of rubbish is being left behind. It's starting quite early in the morning. I believe it was sent to the Parks or the Community Services Director actually, who was looking into it. I just want to get an update of exactly where we're heading with that. I'm having now another resident who also backs onto the property call, raising concerns about just the amount of noise and the damage done to the reserve.
Ms Budin.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dark. Through you, Mr Mayor. We'll look into that for you and get back to you.
Thank you, Ms Budin. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. My second question is some correspondence I've received from a factory owner in Olive Grove in Keysborough. Now, I know that our council's familiar with it. It has to do with a block of 5 small factoriettes, and it's been dealt with by the Director of Planning and Amenity. One occupier there has had significant issues accessing and having issues with, I believe, a tenant next door who's in the meats business. I know Councillor Garrett has also been contacted by this resident or the occupier as well. It's now got to a stage where I believe there's intervention orders, there's been multiple court action, and it's going to heat now. Is it possible of us having, through, I suppose, planning enforcement, a conversation about what options are available to try and resolve the situation if we potentially can, and just see where we can go from here?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, Council, I'm very aware of this particular situation. It's been investigated in detail. There are a number of complaints over a period of time. Those complaints are not really breaches of the planning scheme. The one thing that we are still looking at with regard to the planning scheme is it's related to the parking on site. The issues that have been lodged with us for complaint have been referred to who deals with the meat industry, PrimeSafe, yep. And they've investigated and they are dealing with it from PrimeSafe's Victoria's point of view. But from the point of view of bylaws or local laws, from the point of view of the planning scheme, there are no infringements. The matter is entirely within the hands and the jurisdiction of PrimeSafe. The complainant has been advised of this a number of times, and unfortunately, the relief that the complainant is seeking isn't possible through the mechanisms and the jurisdiction of council. But we have referred and we have liaised with PrimeSafe Victoria on a number of occasions. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing further.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Councillor Milkovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of questions. First of all, I want to thank the officers, or thank everyone, the contractors and officers, on actually delivering stage 1 of the basketball court in Catchum Park. That's great. People have, although the weather hasn't been really too nice, but people are putting it to good use. I do have a question regarding the netball ring on one side. People have asked, because the fence is quite low where the basketball ring is, every time you shoot and you miss, the ball jumps over the fence into the basketball court and you got to walk right around, come back, right around, come back. Is there a chance that we can maybe possibly ask the officers or someone to look at installing some sort of a screening, like just a net that will actually stop because it is like a big court and you've got to walk like 20, 30 metres around to get a ball, come back again. So it kind of renders the netball court not useless, but quite hard to use at times if you sort of, it's very close to the fence and it's quite easy. So I'm not sure if someone can just maybe look at that, please.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you. With my other hat on, yes, I'll take that one on notice, and we'll certainly go out. And it does make sense to do that. And just with regards to questions, unfortunately, Kevin Van Boxtel, who was intending to be my replacement tonight, fell ill at very short notice. So I'm happy to take questions for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Milkovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll probably direct another question at you, Mr Kearsley, then. Want to thank, obviously, yourself and the officers involved and the contractors of installing the Dine art screens at Brady Road shops. So 2 shops that have been waiting for quite a while have actually now got the screens installed. The only question I have in regards to those is that I thought that these screens would be similar to what's installed in central Danding, glass screens with stainless steel poles. What's been delivered is still steel. However, there are half advertisement for the shop on the bottom, which is great. Shops love it. And top part is like a clear through, like a plastic sort of thing. They're quite susceptible to damage. Is that what was planned originally, or was this like a 11th hour decision? Thank you.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you. That level of detail I'm not aware of. It may well be that we've run through all of the more permanent style of barriers. Because the state funds have lapsed, we've run out, we've used it. But what I'll do is I'll ask Mr Van Boxtel to have a look at that one, and it may well be that that's the type that we are now using in the later circumstances pending more funding from the state government. But I'll get that checked.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor
Thank you, Mr.
Milkovic.
Kearsley. Mr. Mayor, could I also get just a brief update? I think I did ask a couple of meetings ago regarding when the actual work will start on the toilets on Brady Road, public toilets that were programmed. Did the tender happen? Didn't?
Mr Kearsley.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on notice and get you some information on that.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Milkovic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I please ask a relevant officer to increase the patrols at Rosewood Downs Primary School? There's issues there with parking, again, people parking into 2-minute parking spots and just leaving the cars. Pick up and drop off times, of course, not. It's just getting a bit, I think people just need to be reminded again to be courteous, and everyone needs to drop off a kid and pick up their kid safely. So some parents tend to forget from time to time, but we can maybe just have someone patrol the area a bit more and give them a bit of a nudge reminder for everyone to be safe. Thank you.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Councillor, certainly I've noted that down. Rosewood Downs Primary School will increase some patrols in the area. And get
Thank
back
you,
to
Mr Bosman. Councillor Milkovic.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovic. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually got 2 questions for tonight. Through you, Mr. Mayor. First question just regarding to Ross Reserve Sport Pavilions. I met up with the Noble Park Junior Football Club over the weekend, so they just want to find out. Previously, it was informed that the pavilion will be completed by late of this month, but it looked like it's not going to get it done on time. So through you, Mr. Mayor, could I please get an update on this project? Thanks.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. We're very close on that one, but I can certainly find out the exact dates with regards to the completion of that project and let you know.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Tan.
Thank you. Question 2, just regarding to following up the question. This is to the question related to CFA Noble Park. So previously they do have an issue with the entrance access of the fire trucks entrance, and especially with the small street like Knox Street, you got 2 car parks both sides on each street, so it's so hard for the truck to go in and out. They would ask the relevant officer to just have a look, investigate further. Could we even extend the keep clear line, extend the line? So could you please give an update on that, when that's going to be done? Thanks.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. I am aware of that particular issue and that question. I've asked Lucas and his team in the transport area to meet with the CFA to talk through those particular issues. They have been raised previously, and I've asked Lucas to have another look at those, especially to keep clear.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Tan.
Do you know how long that's going to take?
Mr Kearsley.
No, I can't comment on that. It depends on when the meeting's.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr
Thanks.
Kearsley. Councillor Tan.
That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Lim.
Thanks, Mayor. Just give you some idea a bit about the last fortnight. On Thursday, the 12th of May, Mayor Jim Mameti and I attend what we call Let's Celebrate for Monash children at the Cheston Hotel. That's a very great one, a good one, just to acknowledge all the donor, the contributor for Monash children for the last couple of years. And on the Friday, the 13th of May, myself and Bernadette Dillon, she's a manager of Greyhound Racecourse, and also her CEO, to come along to discuss how to improve Springvale Activity Centre, how to have a connection between the two places, between the Activity Centre and the Greyhound Racecourse. Therefore, we can attract more visitors to come to Springvale in the future. And on Monday, the 16th of May, I attended EDU meeting here. And Wednesday, the 18th of May, I attended season 6 ceremony with Mayor Councillor Jim Mameti. I didn't expect that very long and one, because they have 2 groups. How many people, Jim? I couldn't remember.
Over 300.
Over 300 people. That's a great one. That's a good one. And also the Thursday, the 19th of May, I attended a community safety forum with Mayor Jim Mameti, and also so many councillors on that day as well, plus Victorian Police of Victoria. And Friday, the 20th of May, I attend National Volunteer Week at Springvale Town Hall. And the 22nd of May, yesterday, it means we have a lot of our councillors, and also especially I'm very emotional about, Luca, Zabe team, and every one of us attended, support Lana for the good cause. She raised probably about 70,000 on that yesterday. And at the end of the function, we tally the fundraising on that day. Yesterday, we raised over 200,000 for Monash children. Yeah, that's great. Even with the little baby by a few weeks old or few days old, and join until and plus some elderly up to 80 years old plus. That's a great walk yesterday, because I think we guys think maybe about close to 2,000 people yesterday. And I didn't know myself. He asked me to speak unexpectedly, and he asked me how much did I raise the last 12 months. I said, I'm not sure. And he told me that I raised 175,000 between Cambodian community and myself, 175,000. I was surprised. Wow, that's a lot of money. Yeah. And the last couple of years, we raised over close to $600,000. That's a very good one for Monash children. It's close to my heart. And just want to update everyone a bit about Springvale Boulevard. Probably going to finish by somewhere the end of July or maybe earlier. Just let everyone know it's very good effort, and communication manager keep inform me every week, and we catch up for last week twice. And also the multi-level car park number 8, we start to do something now. It means that I see all the 3 levels from level 2 to level 3. Both sides, we relocated all the pipes already. Now the next one is just a matter of put the ramps on, that's it. And at multicultural place as well, at the moment, if you have young children or yourself want to see the night light, it's very good one. They display from last couple of days till probably the end of this month, the 29th of May. And very nice and lovely one from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock if you want to see the night light. Otherwise, any time of the day you can enjoy that nightlight. Thank you for our city council that bring more people to come to Springvale, and very well displayed, and also very well promoted as well, because Clara from Springvale Community Hub gave me a lot of flyer and also a lot of brochure as well. Therefore, I I distribute almost all of them. My first question is just wonder how can we handle the disabled toilet, because being vandalized very frequently by drug addict, and I feel sorry for our council because a lot of money to fix that. Any other solution that we can stop those people from vandalize our disabled toilet? Thanks.
Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you. Councillor, you were referencing council's own toilet?
Yeah, on toilet, our council toilet, the number 8 toilet. That's the thing.
Sure. We do have, at the moment, we do have a security guard posted in that location. It is always difficult, though, when it comes to acts of vandalism, to have full coverage 24 hours a day. And unfortunately, we would ask community members not to do that. It does cost our community considerably if they do damage those facilities. I'll check to see, with regards to CCTV cameras, whether we have enough cameras to cover the toings and goings with regards to the outside of the toilet. Of course, you can't have cameras anywhere near inside, but that's something we can look at.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Mayor. The other thing is I discovered lately, one of the girls came into that disabled toilet. She locked herself as well. We could not get into that toilet as well. Don't know how to handle her. Except we tried to ring the police, I think, and don't know how to handle the sort of situation when someone and try to get into that disabled toilet, sleep there, stay there for overnight or the last couple of days, something like that. Yeah.
Mr. Kearsley.
That's a matter for the police, Councillor. I think certainly any of those sorts of behaviours, our officers are not. It's not appropriate for them to do anything, and I'm not sure, you're not suggesting that. I understand, but I think in the case of you coming across those issues, a call to the Springvale Police would be the best.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Kearsley. And we have issue probably not just my ward. I think the homeless people getting more and more in Springvale. The police work very hard to help me, especially Constable Ken Trendish. But sometimes we have no other solution. He said, the police sound like shortage of staff. I said, why shortage? Springvale, you can just a few minutes from the Springvale Activity Center. He said, no, the police that in charge of Springvale not just cover Springvale Activity Center, cover up to Rowville to NW Hill to blah, blah, blah. I said, gee, that's not right. It seems to be we need more police to patrol Springvale more frequently. And he said he's going to come to see me more frequently. Sometimes come too early in the morning that I wasn't at the shop yet. Any other solution that we can do something to get rid of these homeless people?
Ms. Budin.
Thanks.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Lim. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll arrange for the relevant officers to meet with you directly to discuss that further.
Thank you, Ms. Budin.
Thank you, Mayor,
Councillor
and
Lim.
thank you, Mrs. Buren. Because actually the police work quite hard for the last a couple of weeks ago. They send their officer to every second day. After they disappear for a little while, all of them coming back. And I keep telling all the visitors come to Springvale, please do not give any money to these people, otherwise they keep coming. They attract like fly, they attract, and they keep telling each other to come to Springvale because all the Springvale people are very kind to them. Thanks, that's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Long.
These are some of the events that I've attended since my last formal meeting. On the 10th of May, I attended the Mother's Day lunch with the Mauritian Golden Age Club. The 11th of May, I attended an online meeting of the Community Safety Committee. The 12th of May, I attended the online meeting with the Cultural Heritage Committee. 14th of May, I attended a Mother's Day dinner with the Italian Honour Guards. 17th of May, I attended an online meeting of the quarterly kindergarten planning meeting with council officers. The 18th of May, I attended the Greater Danding Volunteers Week lunch. 19th of May, I attended the Community Safety Forum at Tatterson Park. And on the 20th of May, I attended the National Volunteers Week afternoon tea with council's volunteers at Springvale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. You may be aware there was an event over the weekend, a little event, perhaps the most consequential election of our recent times. It is good to consider the outcome of this election and what it means to our Back Your Neighbour campaign led by the City of Greater Dandenong. When Mayor Mehmedi and I and other members of the task force spoke to Labor MPs prior to the election, they made various commitments to us, which were around eliminating temporary protection visas, fixing the broken system so that people can be processed within 6 months, and to increase the humanitarian intake, including community-sponsored visas. We need to continue our work in pushing for swift action on these issues so that the up to 2,000 people in Dandenong who are currently waiting for up to a decade can get on to their lives and start to make a positive contribution to this community. And finally, it is very pleasing that the Tamil family can now head back to Balawayo, or however that is actually pronounced, and that is, in fact, one of the best outcomes of this election. The Police Forum, on behalf of the Council, I would like to thank the Dandenong Police representatives that attended the Community Forum in Keysborough South. We learnt some very exciting community engagement initiatives that will build stronger ties between police and the community going forward. Many of us here attended the Monash Children's Walk yesterday, which was extremely well attended and growing enormously from year to year. We were there, of course, to support our colleague, Councillor Formoso, and her wonderful family, who are doing it very tough. And I have been given an update by Councillor Lim that there was around about $300,000 raised, which is an extraordinary amount, and $665,000 of that was in fact raised by Councillor Formoso herself, which is extraordinary given what she's going through right now. My first question is a follow-up question actually to a question that was asked during question time, just regarding the timing of the costing for the single-storey concept plan for the Dandenong Hub, which was due this week. I wasn't quite clear. Is that still on track to come?
Budin.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, that work is still underway and we'll be coming back to Council as soon as it's ready. But yeah, it's not ready this week.
Thank you, Ms Budin.
So can we just have a more specific time frame? When, next week, soon?
Ms Budin.
Next month?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I can't recall off the top of my head the date that we've got scheduled, so I'll take that on notice and let you know.
Thank you, Ms Budin. Councillor
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was promised this week, so hopefully it's not too far away. My second question is, what was the outcome of the council meeting with the Environmental Protection Agency, including outcomes for air quality monitoring and improving community engagement on this issue?
Mr Bosman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Garrard, I can inform you that we had a very productive meeting with EPA last Friday, and we thank them for their commitment in resolving the issue with us. There seems to have been some, I don't know what's changed, I don't know if it's officers there, but the amount of collaboration, and I mean genuinely, I'm not saying that, is just really heartening. And they're looking to work with us over the coming months to resolving the issues that are there. At that meeting, we agreed to continue to undertake monitoring and review of the odour complaints. So would like to request that our community members continue to engage or to report the complaints to the EPA. The EPA and ourselves will prioritise these complaints to start the investigation of suspected causes of the odours. We've also agreed to undertake a community engagement meeting in Keysborough in the next couple of months to discuss the issues around odour. And at this meeting, the EPA will be looking to give monitoring devices to community members, to individual community members, so that the specific scientific data can be used in highlighting the impacts and identifying the areas of impact. The EPA, along with their odour scientists, will come and give a presentation to our councillors and executive on odours and compliance issues within our industrial areas, and that will happen within the next 4 to 8 weeks. And we're very hopeful that this increased focus and partnership with the EPA will resolve this long outstanding issue with the community. So it is looking good, and the fact that they are prepared to hand out monitoring devices, individual monitoring devices to complainants in the area. Already we've encouraged one of the complainants in Keysborough, somebody who's suffering at the downwind effects of some of these complaints, has already been encouraged to avail themselves of such devices. So I think we're making good progress. There's a genuine, ongoing and frequent collaboration with the EPA, and I think we'll start getting results soon. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Bosman, thank you. It is pleasing that a state government agency is willing to engage with us. Whilst it's great that the community in Keysborough are doing their bit, and they've been feeding an enormous amount of information to the council, which has been very pleasing. But the commitment was around air quality monitoring further within the industrial zone, and a more effective surveillance system, not just on odour, but on the air quality in that. So I won't ask a further question on it, but hopefully, well, okay, you want to answer?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, I want the question because I want to be able to tell you, and it's a good news thing, is that is part of the discussions we're having with them about air quality monitoring stations, the number of them that are needed and where they're needed. Already in terms of the work that we're doing together with the EPA, there seem to be 2 main sites that could be at fault for a lot of the complaints that we're receiving. So obviously, as we start narrowing down the data that we're getting from the community and other complainants, we're able to start working out how many of the air quality monitoring devices we're needing and how we're going to go about that. So that is very much part of the agenda for discussion with the EPA. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Bosman. That sounds very pleasing. And it's great the conversation's continuing, because we also need to work out how we can monitor the carcinogens that will come out of the waste-to-energy plant that's being planned there. My next question is around access to a public walkway and park have been blocked by developers in Kincoit Road in Keysborough South. Has the councillor spoken to the developers, and what assurances do residents have that disruption for the surrounding residents will not continue?
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillor, for that question. Yes, officers were out last week with the developer and directed that all fencing and all obstructions be removed forthwith, which the developer was happy to do, so that the shared path at Bend Road on Reserve 33 Bend Road, Keysborough, is now open and there are no blockages. As also, we have been advised that they should not be putting any construction vehicles also in the way. So we've made it very clear to the developer, and we now believe that there's a better understanding of what they should be doing and should be doing.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Garrard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question also on that issue. Many residents have purchased properties in Bend Road that were not informed that, in fact, they will be living next to a large industrial development. Therefore, this has come as a very great shock to them as they start to see the looming large buildings they're living next to. When was this area rezoned from farming to industrial, and how is the 30-metre industrial zone buffer being measured from the residential houses to the industrial development?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you to you, Councillor Garrard. I don't know whether they bought this more recently and weren't aware, but certainly there was a very intense, vigorous, long process at the time of the rezoning of that land. The industrial land in Keysborough South was rezoned from farming zone to industrial zone 1 in 2009 under the planning scheme. It was planning scheme amendment, I don't know if you need, but C87. There was extensive exhibition and consultation at the time, and the development plan overlay with the description of the interface buffer formed part of that documentation. As with all planning scheme amendments, a state government planning panel was established, which considered, amongst all of that detail, obviously the interface between the residentially zoned land and the industrial land. And it seemed appropriate to rezone this land to industrial subject to a 30-metre buffer, and that buffer is now in place. Where the buffer starts and finishes along the full length of the interface, however, changes. It varies from place to place, but it's still 30 metres. However, in terms of the Kingcote Drive interface, it starts on the eastern side of Kingcote Drive and includes the footpath to the east of Kingcote Drive. In this instance, there is also a 5-metre fire track at the eastern end of the buffer area and to the west of the new industrial building. So sitting between the 30-metre buffer, there's another 5 metres of fire track that goes along the side, resulting in the setback from the eastern side of Kingcote Drive to the building being approximately 35 metres. So all of that was part of the original rezoning documentation. That 35 metres is in that strip along Kingcote Drive on the eastern side, measured not, in other words, it doesn't include the width of the road, it gets measured from the edge of the width of the road through to the building. So it's the width of the road plus the 35 metres. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I didn't mean to suggest the council was in any way at fault there, but I believe the real estate agents, when they sold the houses, did not inform people. In fact, they informed people there was going to be parks and lovely things there. My next question, Mr Mayor, is, given the rapid planning and construction timeframes for the cemetery in the Victorian State Budget, what are the timeframes for the Southern Metropolitan Community Trust with finalising their proposal, in particular regarding community consultation?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you again to yourself, to Councillor Garrett. Council has previously advised at a council meeting, I think it might have been the last one or the one before. I just want to reiterate that we do not believe the money that has been allocated in the state budget is to that specific project on that specific portion of land. From what I understand and what I've been informed, the allocation or the reservation of that budget to the Southern Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust is to make sure that the money is set aside for an agency that is responsible for its expenditure. This site is being investigated as part of their investigations to meet the need for cemeteries within the southeast area. At this stage, the Southern Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust has not lodged a rezoning application with the state government. That won't be lodged with us. It will be lodged with the state government, and they are still doing their investigations, although I can say that there's no doubt at all that that site is their preferred option. So until such time as they've actually lodged an application, until such time we have certainty that they will and do lodge, trying to get a date or an idea around the community consultation process. We won't know that. It'll be triggered by when they go ahead and if they go ahead with lodging their rezoning. The other thing I can say is that in discussions with them, the council's unanimous, I'm talking about council laws, the political entity of council, the view of the council laws, opposition to that project and that site has been made clearly known to them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Bosman. Whilst you say that they are looking at other proposed sites, we don't know what they are. We know that on the council, the Trust's own documentation, they still cite the Heatherton Road site as the site that they are looking at, so that we have no information that they are in any way listening to the council or in any way listening to the community. So as far as we're aware, they're continuing with their process of developing and zeroing in on this site, regardless of anything that we say locally. So we have no guarantee that anyone is listening to us, and we have a budget item in the state budget, and as far as we know, tomorrow they can turn around and say it's a fait accompli and start the process. So, you know, it's extremely precarious from our point of view when we have no feedback at all that they are listening to us. Thank you, Mr Bosman. My second last question is, what discussions have been held with other councils in Dandenong Creek catchment about getting their support regarding advocacy against the cemetery proposal for the Dandenong floodplains?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you for yourself. Councillor, just to go back to your earlier question, or the statement that you made at the end after I gave you a response, as far as I know, and I might be wrong, they are not investigating any other sites. I think this is the only site at this stage that they are focused on. Yes. But what I said is that they haven't put in an application, and I think that this is very much still the area of their focus. But that the state government hasn't assigned that money to that site is the difference. So we do know that the Southern Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust are very much focused on this as their site. With regard to what discussions have we had with other councils in the Dandenong Creek catchment, I think it was at the last meeting, the our CEO advised that council had sought, or the CEO had sought to have a meeting with the CEO of Melbourne Water, and that we were still awaiting a response to that request. I can advise that we have received a response, and that a meeting with the CEO of Melbourne Water and some of the executive of Melbourne Water is scheduled for sometime mid-June. So within the next fortnight. I don't have the date. That would be a meeting that the CEO has in the CEO's diary. So at this stage, there have been no meetings with other councils in the catchment, the Creek catchment, and this will be followed up as soon as we've had that meeting then with Melbourne Water. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mr Mehmedi. My final question is, what is the timeframe for getting the Keysborough South Community Hub put out to tender?
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Councillor. That is June 2022, so next month.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Deputy Mayor Foster.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I just want to start by actually congratulating the Australian Labor Party on being elected to the federal government. What that means for Greater Dandenong is that we get $20 million towards the Dandenong Wellbeing Centre and Noble Park Aquatic Centre upgrades. So $20 million extra for us, which is a great outcome from that. But along with Councillor Garrard, I note that when I first came on council, one of the first questions I put to council is that we write to the Immigration Minister of the day seeking to have the Billawella family move back to Billawella. That letter obviously was not responded to and not acted on, but we know that a Labor government will act on that. So it's quite moving to know that this family, who have been stuck in detention, 2 little girls born in Australia, really should be considered Australians, will now be able to go back to Billawella where they are loved, and where the whole family can contribute to society. So this is a great outcome, even just for this little family, but it's a big outcome and very moving for me, and I'm sure for many of you here. I also want to acknowledge that last week was Volunteers Week, and there were a number of events that many of the councillors attended as part of that. I want to thank our volunteers in the City of Greater Dandenong for the hard work that they do for nothing. They don't get paid, of course, but they save our community millions of dollars because of the hard work that they put in, the time and effort that they put in, and because they want to be there and they're passionate about volunteering. And so I attended the Greater Dandenong Volunteer Resource Service Volunteer Week event for lunch, just celebrating the hard work that our volunteers do, which was lovely. Also attended with a number of our fellow councillors the Community Safety Public Forum at Tatterson Park. I believe we had an increase in residents attending, but it would be much better to see a lot more attending and to voice their concerns and take up the opportunity to ask questions to local police or Victoria Police, and also us as councillors there. With my fellow councillors, attended the Monash Children's Hospital walk, raising funds on behalf of Team Lucasade. Again, just an amazing facility in our area, and they do such great work. So it was fantastic that we were able to support something like that, and also support our fellow councillor, Lana Formoso, and her family. Just two questions today, Mayor Mehmedi. I have brought to Council's attention some concerns on Dunblane Road in Noble Park, that it has been used quite a lot as a thoroughfare between Heatherton Road and Princess Highway. I'm just seeking a bit of an update on the progress into that, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm not able at this point to give you an update. I will chase that up with Lucas and his team first thing in the morning and get you a response on that. Apologies if it has been sitting with us for some time, but we will get on with it.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Deputy Mayor Foster.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. I look forward to hearing your reply on the progress. Another concern that's come to my attention is the Ian Street crossing at Heatherton Road in Noble Park. I believe there is a concrete little island that sort of makes it difficult for people who perhaps might be mobilising using wheelchairs or even prams. I believe one of the residents who is wheelchair bound has had to go onto Heatherton Road in order to get around the concrete island, which you can imagine, Heatherton Road is quite dangerous. And so I do have significant concerns for this resident. Is there anything that we can do to perhaps look into that, and maybe potentially a pedestrian crossing that's raised to make it easier to cross that T intersection through? Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor, that we agree exactly with that issue in terms of it is causing a problem. And those works were undertaken by the Level Crossing Removal Authority, and we don't agree that they are at a suitable standard. We were fortunate that we were undertaking or about to undertake Ian streetscape improvement works, so we added that additional issue into those works, and the plans are now on display for a period of time in terms of community consultation, and that project is budgeted through both Council's budget and the Noble Park Revitalisation Board budget as well. So whilst it's not immediate, there will be improvements coming with regards to that particular issue that you raised.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Deputy Mayor Foster.
Sorry, can I just speak on that one as well?
Councillor Long.
I had an officer come up with the lady in the wheelchair, and it was explained to us that was a project with the rail people, and but it wasn't satisfactory. This woman is permanently in a wheelchair, and she has to go out onto Heatherton Road, which is not safe at all, and we have to do something ASAP for her, and not only her, there are other people in motorised scooters that can't walk. So it needs to be done ASAP.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Deputy Mayor Foster.
Thank you also, Councillor Long, for adding to that. I just wanted to follow up on, you mentioned consultation on that matter, Mr Kearsley. When will that consultation period end?
Mr Kearsley.
I was just seeing whether or not I could find out then. Unfortunately, what I'll do is I'll send an email around advising once I get onto the website that tells me.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Deputy Mayor Foster.
Another issue that has come up with regards, not specifically to Ian Street, but the laneway that runs parallel to it. The laneway doesn't seem to have a name, not that I could find anyway. But this particular laneway is not lit at all. I believe that some unsavoury happenings occur in that laneway as well, and it's right next to the Uralla Disability Services as well. So I'm just wondering if, as part of the streetscape that you refer to, Mr Kearsley, are we able to look at perhaps addressing the concerns that are present in that laneway that runs parallel to that? So lighting, making it a little bit more pleasing to the eye as well. Thank you.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. We can certainly take that one on notice to see it is in the design. And the website's now telling me construction is June, July this year. So it's imminent in terms of those street works.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Deputy Mayor Foster. Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended quite a few events that have already been mentioned, so I won't go over that. Mayor, a resident has brought to my attention a situation regarding Sandown train station. The station entrance at Lightwood Road has a couple of issues that I would like to ask the Director of Planning, some questions without notice on them. The first one is that there apparently is a large skip positioned there, partially full, and has been there for several months, and it's not apparent as to why it is still there, and obviously we want to keep things clean and tidy, have pride in where we live, so I would appreciate if the Council could make some inquiries as to what the purpose of that skip was or is. Mayor, that's the first part. The second part is just nearby, again, the Lightwood Road Sandown train station entrance. There are charity donation bins, and I've raised a similar sort of issue, I recall, a few years ago. But we can see that around the charity donation bins on the ground, there is rubbish. And these donation bins tend to attract rubbish because they get full and people just decide, well, they'll just put their donations on the footpath, which Mayor, you wouldn't have thought made sense, given that the items that they're going to be donating would get wet and dirty. But I think sometimes people think, I couldn't be bothered, just put it there anyway as an excuse. So just regarding, the question is regarding these large donation bins where residents can put sort of used clothing and toys and so on. Does Council, given that they're a bit of a hot spot, does Council check for rubbish around these donation bins with any regularity? Look, I acknowledge that the charities, the particular charities, have good intentions and do good work. However, on the other side, there is a responsibility, Mayor, I believe, that the charities should be responsible for any amenity impacts of their donation bins, and within reason making sure that the donation bins are empty regularly and not kept full, so that careless residents then have the excuse of putting clothes and on the footpath, which then gets dirty, wet, and is an extreme eyesore. So in regards to these donation bins, what powers does council have? Did we grant them a permit in the first place? If they don't clean up around their bin, can we revoke their permit? Or should we charge the charities, maybe a bit controversial, but should we charge the charities for any clean-up activity that happens around their bins where there is a direct causal link? So that is, I think, the main gist of what I wanted to get across. I don't want to beat up on charities at this council meeting, Mayor, but they have to maintain the areas around their bins. Our residents expect a clean and tidy environment. Thank you.
Mr. Bosman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To yourself. Councillor, firstly, I think the charities themselves are as frustrated as you and I are about how their charity bins are abused for the purpose of simply dumping rubbish. We know that it's costing the agencies, and talking about, agencies like Salvos, Red Cross, etc. They are spending millions of dollars a year of that money that would otherwise go to social good, spending millions of dollars a year disposing of people who've of rubbish that has just been dumped as rubbish, and somebody's else will get rid of it. That's the view of the dumper. We have had success in recent times of identifying a lot of these sites. We've got CCTV, and we've actually identified a number of dumpers and prosecuted them, fined them for dumping outside collection points. With regard to the bins, yes, it is a requirement that those bins are cleaned and cleared and attended to regularly, and we have an ongoing discussion with them. Some places are more of hotspots than others. And I also recall this one at Sandown. And if I remember correctly, if it's the same one, Councillor, it's actually on the Vic Track land, not on land that we've got any jurisdiction over. It's state land. But nonetheless, that Sandown one, I will follow up and see if we can get that tidied up, even if it's on the Vic Track land. Let's see what sort of resolution to the Sandown one. But I hope that answers the questions in short around what we do with the bins. We do have an ongoing consultation with them through our local laws team. By and large, most of them operate well enough, and where they are not being looked after, where those bins are not looked after, we require them to be removed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Councillor O'Reilly. Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Trung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last fortnight, I'm very busy with election. In nearly 40 years in Australia, I involve many elections, and every time I dream that have one day, my people in Vietnam, they have the election like that for them one day in future, because all of them, I think most of them, all of them dream for that. On the Sunday, 22nd of May, I participate with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and also some councillors like Richard Liam, Ronda Garage and also Sean Early. And we attend to the fundraising for Monash Children's Hospital, which organized by Councillor Lana Formoso, son, Luca, at Geopark. And at this place, I met a man, is a Basham, is a person from fundraising team of Monash Children's Hospital. He was very happy to see me there because 2018, I took from him about 150 tins and put on the Vietnamese shop from Food Tray, St. Alban, Agdia, Sunshine North, and Mayston, Clayton, Shinwell South. And after that, up to 2 years after that, I collect back, and 2020, I hand to him over $14,800. And he recognized me, and of course, he was very happy to shake hand and say thank you about it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trung. Councillors attended the Mauritian Golden Age Club Mother's Day lunch. Fantastic to meet with all the Mauritian seniors, and I can tell you what, they can actually dance. The foot dancing was great, and they love to sing, so they were a very bubbly bunch, and it was great to be with the Mauritian Golden Age seniors. I also visited the APR plastic sorting facility, the Australian Paper Recovery at Dandenong South. They can recycle plastics. It's only a trial at the moment, 1 tonne. It's an indoor facility, and it's only under trial at the moment, but they told me that they can, if it all works well, they'd be looking at doing about 50 tonne a day, a week, I think, 50 tonne a week to recycle and sort plastics. So I'm looking out for this APR plastics, and I'm sure Councillor Garrard's very interested as well. Maybe we'll take the councillors for a tour when they're ready. Also, councillors, I had the pleasure, like some other councillors, to be involved in the community grants panel meeting, the community development. There was plenty of community representation and also councillor staff. So I'd like to thank our community representatives and also council staff who were involved in the grants panel, and there was lots and lots of applications, and you had to read them and go through the processes. So that was good and pleasing to actually have community reps and council staff and councillors as well on those panels. I also attended the Monash Health thank you to donors in Chatston with Councillor Lim. This was an event that I was a guest with Councillor Lim. There was the people in that room had actually donated $16 million to Monash Health. So the company that I was with as a guest of Councillor Lim, there's lots of people who donate big to Monash Health, and it was great to be with them on that evening. I also went to the Launch Housing media event in their new family supporting housing building, Viv's Place on Allen Street in Dandenong. I was very, very impressed, and this is going to be a facility where it's only going to be females and with their children for family violence. So this is a place, a safe house for these ladies and their children to go to, and it's going to be manned 24 hours a day with support services, and the facilities are really top-notch, so I congratulate Launch Housing and the state government on providing those facilities. I also opened up a new cabana lounge in Dandenong in Thomas Street. It's good to see that there's not many empty shops in Thomas Street, and I can say that Lonsdale Street's getting filled up, and I think the CBD of Dandenong is starting to pick up, and you know, the CBD in Springvale and the CBD area in Noble Park are thriving, and it's great to see that Dandenong is coming good as well after the couple of years we've had in lockdown. I also attended the annual Eid dinner hosted by the Fiji Islamic Cultural Society. The Fijis, if you haven't been to one of their events, they're very, very colourful, and it was great to celebrate the end of, and it was about a week after Eid, so, but, you know, going to all these events, I guess they've got to spread them out, so it was great to be with the Fiji Islamic Cultural Society. I was called up, actually, very late notice, to have a photo with Disney Newsies junior cast. The Australian premiere performance was held at the Drum Theatre, and it was a sold-out performance. And it was only a one-off performance, but hopefully we might get them back later on. And but they were fantastic, and it was there was about 60 or 70 youth that were involved in this, and I really enjoyed watching them. It was great to be at the Drum Theatre. I also attended the Vietnamese Australian Senior Association of Victoria, VASAVIC, Mother's Day lunch. It's great to be Mayor and Mother's Day in Greater Dandenong. You get to invited to so many events. But VASA do some fabulous work, and I've been to some of the events already this year, and they put on a good show. And I think, it doesn't matter where you're from, the mothers are also so very important, and it was great to celebrate with our Vietnamese community. I also attended the Community Care Awards, Present Graduation Certificates and Service Recognition Awards in Springvale, and there was they went to Chisholm and got these awards, all their certificates. They trained, and it was great to meet up with, I think there was maybe 60, 70 carers in the room, and we had a bit of a chat, and it's great that they can actually, their work continued through COVID, and it was great to acknowledge that and thank them for their services they do at Council. I also attended the Greater Dandenong Volunteer Resource Service National Volunteer Week celebrations, which was great to attend them. Council actually fund part of them, or the whole of them, I'm not sure exactly, but I do know we do fund the Greater Dandenong Volunteer Resource Service, which are based in our old council buildings in Clough Street. I also attended the opening of the new traffic lights on Springvale Road and Virginia Street, which cost the state government $3.9 million, and it will actually make traffic at the Newcomen and Virginia and Springvale Road new traffic light signals work much better. And I think with the boulevard that we're doing in Springvale, which Councillor Lim said will open sooner than later, it's just going to be such a great place to go through Springvale. I remember 10, 15 years ago with the traffic lights, and now with the grade separations and all these beautiful works we're doing in Springvale, it's just going to be, I think, a beautiful drive driving down Springvale Road. I always used to, whenever I used to drive down that road, I used to get stressed because if it wasn't something, you'd be stopping and starting. It was more like a car park than actually a road. So it's good to have these new traffic lights, and thank you to the state government's $3.9 million. I also, like Councillor Lim said, we had two groups of over 300 new Australians receive their citizenship certificates, and that's probably the most rewarding job as a mayor, when you hand over an Australian citizenship certificate to the new Australian citizens. So I congratulated them. Unfortunately, they were a bit too late to be able to vote but they said they would have loved to, but unfortunately they didn't have enough time. But they'll be looking forward to the next elections. Also, councillors, I had also attended the opening of the new ASRC Refugee Resource Hub in Thomas Street, Dandenong, which is a beautiful building. It's got services there. I know the Sister Works have a room up there, and I know the Afghan Hazara Women's have an office there as well. So it was really, really nicely done, and with children's facilities, and I think they told me they had 4 lawyers and 10 other volunteer lawyers there. So lots of good services for refugees and asylum seekers right here in Thomas Street, Dandenong. I also attended with a majority of the councillors for the Community Safety Public Forum hosted by us and Victoria Police. Inspector Koga and his team, I think we had 7 officers there from Dandenong and Springvale, and also we had the pleasure of Tim Richardson, who is the state member for Mordialloc, but his electorate is going to include Springvale South, and that's where we had the meeting at Tatterson Park, and it was great to have the community come out and ask the questions. And I'd like to congratulate Inspector Koga and Mr Richardson, who actually responded in quite detail with their answers, and I think the residents can walk away very happy with the detail and the way that the councillors also supported the evening was fantastic. So I'll definitely be writing a letter to Inspector Coburn and Mr Richardson and thanking them for their efforts. We actually had the National Volunteers Week afternoon tea celebration with our very own City of Greater Dandenong volunteers, which was from 16th to the 22nd of May. And the slogan this year was Better Together. And there wasn't as many volunteers as we normally get because our volunteers are normally seniors, and we haven't been able to get together or do have things for them to do over the last couple of years with COVID. But hopefully we can build that number again, and as the services start to open up and we get out to do what we normally do as a council. So if there's any volunteers out there, please contact council. We're more than happy to have more volunteers come on board our City of Greater Dandenong team. As most councillors mentioned, we actually went to Giles Park for the Monash Children's Hospital fundraising walk. We all walked our 5 kilometres, which was great, but we were there to support our colleague Lana Formosa and her son Luca, and Team Luca's Aid through Lana Formosa and her family, as councillor said, raised $65,000 out of the $200,000 that were raised for the day. Is a phenomenal effort, and Lana and her family asked people if they wanted to help her. The best way is to help the hospital that's helping her son. So it was a great outcome to raise $65,000. But not only that, to catch up with other people. There was, I'm not sure, 1,000, 2,000 people. I'm not sure exactly the number of how many people attended it, but it was a good walk. I actually walked with Deputy Mayor Foster and Councillor Garrard, and followed by Councillor Trung, who was making sure we were on the right track. So, but it was good to be there and do the walk as well, and celebrate or raise money for Monash Children's Hospital, which is very, very important. That's all I have to report. Mr Kearsley, you've got questions that were taken on notice at the last council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just tabling tonight questions raised at the last council meeting by Councillors O'Reilly, Dark, Foster, Lim and yourself. So I'll table those.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Lim's got his hand up. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to have a quick announcement that I forgot all about. The Sunday coming up, just like to invite all the councillor, the director. Yes, CEO John Danny going to turn up as well. Please come along to Cambodian Temple, 159 Clark Road, Springwell South. Come along. We're going to provide you a very nice Cambodian food. You don't have to come early. You can come at 10:30, finish around about 12 o'clock. 10:30, we just try to provide you a very nice seat. Compared to Cambodian people had to sit on the floor. For all of you, going to sit on a very special table. Please come along. Everyone, CEO, director, manager, whatever. And we start about 11 o'clock, speech by the mayor, by the professor, and by director of Monash Health and so on. And after we have a bit of traditional dancing and food served to everyone. And after you can leave everything to Cambodian people to enjoy themselves. That one exciting I forgot to that Mayor mentioned about the traffic light at Virginia Street and Newcomen. Is an exciting one after I witnessed 30 years. It's very congested, accident very frequently. Now we have a brand new traffic light and 40 kilometer zone and so on. Very nice. At the moment you do another turn right as well. Thank you for state government that provide us 3.9 million. And also the Vasa, very colorful one at 10, and I have a privilege to sponsor them this time as well. About all the hampers on for the Vasa elderly people. Thanks for that, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillors, item 7, urgent business. If there's no urgent business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:19 p.m.